Hi, peeps. You're listening to She's My Cherry Pie, the baking podcast from the Cherry Bombe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jessie Sheehan. I'm a baker, recipe developer, and cookbook author, and my fourth book is coming out this fall. Each Saturday, I'm hanging out with the sweetest bakers around and taking a deep dive into their signature bakes. My guest today is Amisha Gurbani, who you may know as the Jam Lab on Instagram. She's a cookbook author, recipe developer, photographer, and computer engineer based in the Bay Area. Her debut cookbook, Mumbai Modern, was released in 2021 and is a celebration of Indian cuisine made for the American kitchen. Amisha also has a column in the food section of the San Francisco Chronicle. Amisha is passionate about unique flavor combinations, and the recipe we're discussing today is a perfect example. Chocolate and almond praline ice cream sandwiches. Yum. Visit cherrybombe.com for today's recipe, and stay tuned for our chat. Thank you to Grappa Nonnino for supporting today's show. Grappa is a traditional Italian spirit made by distilling pomace, the skin, seeds, and stems of grapes left over from the winemaking process. Generations have loved to sip grappa or use it in cocktails, and some even use grappa as an ingredient in baked goods and desserts. I've used bourbon, rum, and amaretto before, but never grappa. So the folks at Grappa Nonnino challenged me to create some special treats with their award-winning grappa varietals. I made a chocolate budino with Nonnino's Monovitigno Chardonnay grappa. The varietal's notes of bread, vanilla, and pastry paired so well with the chocolate. Nonnino's Monovitigno Merlot grappa, with its notes of rose petal and cherry and its fruity finish, was the perfect addition to my ricotta cake with strawberries. A trifle is always a showstopper, so I made a raspberry trifle but swapped out the traditional sherry for Grappa Nonnino Monovitigno Moscato. This varietal's floral, sage, thyme, and vanilla flavors were an ideal complement to the tart raspberries and sweet mascarpone cream. Nonnino has been distilling grappa since 1897 and has been led by generations of amazing women, from Silvia Nonnino, Italy's first female master distiller, to Silvia's 3 granddaughters, who run the distillery today. Keep an eye on my Instagram, Jessie Sheehan Bakes, to learn and see just how I use Grappa Nonnino in my baked goods and desserts and to get the recipes. You can also learn more about Grappa Nonnino at grappannonnino.it. Peeps, have you heard the news? Cherry Bombe's first ever Jubilee Wine Country is happening in Napa Valley on October 26th and 27th. It'll be a weekend filled with great wine, winemakers, beautiful food, seasonal produce, conversation, connection, and California. Passes are now available. To learn more and snag a pass, visit cherrybombe.com. Let's check in with today's guest. Amisha, so happy to have you on She's My Cherry Pie and to chat ice cream sandwiches with you and so much more.
I am so excited to be here, Jessie.
So you have said so beautifully that although Mumbai is your home city, really you were brought up in the kitchen. And I was hoping you could tell us about your earliest kitchen memory of holding your mom's sari in the wee hours of the morning, and I want to know why it was so early. Can you tell us about that early memory of yours?
So my mom's been my inspiration for cooking, and that's how it all started, right in the kitchen of my home in Mumbai. It's by the beach, Juhu Beach, and it's beautiful. You get a view of the Arabian Sea. It's gorgeous. She was an early riser, and she loved getting everything done in the morning. The breakfast, lunch was all done by 10 a.m. She wanted to get things done very quickly. With all the noise in the kitchen, it's an apartment, so, the noise travels. So I would wake up listening to all the sounds, the pressure cooker whistle going away. I would wake up and she would be cooking and I would be like, Mom, what are you doing? I was under 10 and I would hold her sari and I would be so interested in what she's doing, and like this masala dabba with all the spices, and she's making all these different things. And I was very intrigued with all the smells, the sights, the sounds. And that's how I got into cooking. She was totally my inspiration. And the love she put into cooking, it resonated, and that's how I got it.
So you always helped your mom in the kitchen, playing with spices and flavors, and there was always something baking in your home.
Yes.
As your mom not only loved dessert, but she had a degree in home science, and so she knew how to bake so many different things, which wasn't very common in India
No.
in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the variety of things that you would make, both Western, Indian, all of it?
Yeah. So my mom actually was born in Uganda in Africa because my grandparents had migrated to Africa in the 1940s for business reasons. And that's where my mom was born. So she was brought up by the people working there in the house with my grandmom. And they would teach her baking. They taught my grandma baking and they taught my mom baking. So surprisingly, there's a recipe in my cookbook, Mumbai Modern, which is called My Mom's Famous Biscuits, because that was her signature baking dish. Because of the Idi Amin rule in the 1970s, they had to go back to India on a ship. And they carried a little oven, which they had in Africa, which was the Siemens little oven. It was a stovetop oven. And they carried that back to Mumbai. And when my mom got married to my dad, she got that oven back to her house in Mumbai, where I was born. And that's where she used to bake, in the little oven. And believe it or not, that oven lasted for about 80 years. And then finally we had to give it up. But it lasted for a very, very long time. And she baked our birthday cakes in that. She baked lots of cookies in that. And we actually she had a small business where she was selling the cookies too.
So I know your mom, birthday cakes she would make, but also like souffles
Yes.
and biscuits or
Yeah.
cookies and puddings and trifles. And I loved learning this, but there were never any measurements. You've described it as taste and go, or everything was an approximation. Can you unpack that for us, like how that works? And I also wondered, did that make it difficult for you when you became a recipe developer and you're like, oh, I think I need to write this down?
Yeah. So she had a degree in home science and she learned souffles. She learned how to make jams. She learned how to make shrubs, all of that as she was studying for her home science degree. They had measurements. The baking ones had measurements. But again, it was not in grams like how we do now. It was more in a style of cups and a little bit more approximation. I don't know. She made it work and she was an expert at it. And then there was the savory cooking, the Indian cooking, where she would not measure anything. She was just taking spoons, taking the masalas, and just dumping it into a pot with vegetables. And I'm like, how much did you put of that? And she's just put like a pinch of this, a pinch of that. And I'm like, Mom, I can't do this. This is so difficult. And finally, I caught on to it, just observing her day by day and learning how she does it. And I instilled that in me too. So when it came to recipe developing and when I got into food blogging and putting recipes online on my blog, it was difficult. It was very, very difficult, like especially writing Indian recipes and with proper measurements. It was very difficult because I was used to like doing the pinch and I go by taste. I taste a little bit and I'm like, this has a little bit less of the garam masala. I need to add a little bit more to make it more tasty. So I had to improvise a lot and study a lot in terms of how much would make it a good dish. And it took a while to get used to that pattern and to be able to write the recipes and put them on the blog. So yes, it was a difficult process, but I eventually caught up to it just by practice.
You leave Mumbai and you move to California to get a master's degree in computer science, yes?
Correct.
And then once your kids are born, you start a blog called The Jam Lab.
Yeah.
And I loved learning this. The idea to start making jam, which is what you did first when you started the Jam Lab, was inspired by all the PB&J sandwiches that you were making for your preschool kids.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Tell us about PB&J sandwiches for kids and then your little company.
Yeah. My kids were 2 and 4 going to preschool. We were giving them lunches from home, saving money and making sure they're getting food from home. And one of their lunches used to be PB&J, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So simple, right? But I did not like the jams in the market. They were too sweet. The color was like sort of dull, not bright like the fresh California fruits. And I was like, I need to change this and I need to make jam at home. So I started making jam at home. And I'm like, look at the color of this jam. Why is it so different from the store-bought jams? And I was like, okay, I'm going somewhere with this. Believe it or not, the first flavor I made was strawberry and chocolate jam. because my kids love strawberry and chocolate. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put chocolate in the strawberry jam. And they loved it. Okay, they loved it. And imagine a strawberry chocolate jam with peanut butter in a sandwich. Delish.
Can I just ask, were you using cocoa powder or were you using melted
I
chocolate?
was using melted chocolate. Just Ghirardelli melted chocolate chips, like Ghirardelli chocolate chips, and just putting it in the jam. And it was amazing. It was a great touch to the jam, and my kids loved it. And I started experimenting with all the different fruits at the farmer's market, peach jam and apricot jam. And kids generally at that age are fussy about the different fruits. They just want strawberry or raspberry because of the color, it's bright red. But they appreciated the peach jam. They loved the apricot jams. They loved the different fruit jams. I'm like, this is going somewhere. And that's how I started my company called the Jam Lab. I got my cottage industry license, and then I started selling jams on Etsy. I did that for a couple of years. I actually even did a few weddings to sell jam as wedding favors. My husband did all the branding design for the jam company, and people used to really love the jams. And believe it or not, I never got a negative comment. Never.
I believe it. Are you kidding? I believe it. And this was all at the same time that you had your full-time job.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're amazing. And you have a great kind of explanation for the name of your blog, although maybe it started because of the jam.
Correct.
Tell us about how you unpack the title now.
Yeah. So it's Jam Lab. It started off because I was making jams, but the way I perceive it is lab is my kitchen and jamming is where I jam in the kitchen with experimenting with different flavors, different foods, with baking and cooking, and how I meld the flavors together. So Jam Lab is still valid.
So I wonder how you would say that your dessert style has evolved since your jam making days. I know your followers call you the flavor queen, which I love. And you've described flavor combinations with herbs and spices and fruit and cheese as being like your forte.
Yeah.
But tell us how you think of your dessert style.
I love combining flavors together. I'm just not happy with plain strawberry jam or a plain peach jam. I want to combine flavors together. And I think it adds a next level elegance to the product or even to the dessert. Just for example, in my cookbook, I have a jam which is an apricot and saffron jam. The saffron adds a depth of flavor to the apricot jam, and it's fantastic with like cheese and crackers. And it's one of my favorite jams, actually. I have a cake recipe that I did for SF Chronicle as well, which is like a peach and saffron cake. And again, saffron adds like a beautiful depth of flavor to the cake. It was one of my popular recipes when I had it published in the newspaper and on their website. I love combining flavors together. I think it just takes it to the next level. And I've always gotten a lot of appreciation for it. It's not something that was commonly done, although I do see it happening more often now. But it's a concept that I came up when I started my jam company. I would combine like peach and mint together. I would combine blood orange and rosemary together. Again, another wonderful combination that goes well with cheese and crackers. So it just brings an element of a touch of savory to the sweet, which I love.
Your book, Mumbai Modern, you call it your pandemic baby, and it's vegetarian recipes that are inspired by your Indian roots and California cuisine. And it's also dedicated to your mom.
Yes.
I know that you promised her that you would write a cookbook one day with her recipes in it. Can you unpack how Indian roots and California cuisine intersect? I know it's personal to you, but I also was thinking you write a lot about the way that you ate seasonally in India with your mom when you were little, and that sort of is just how you eat now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I grew up with a lot of fresh vegetables. We ate seasonally in Mumbai. My mom used to go to the so-called farmer's market because it's there 24/7, 365 days of a year. It's just there. So you go to the vendor, you get whatever you want, and she would go like almost every second or third day, and I would go along with her to pick the fresh vegetables, whatever was in season. So we ate fruits in season, we ate vegetables in season. For example, strawberries come in season in Mumbai in the winter months. Believe it or not, yeah, it's strange, right? So it's actually in season December and January. So that's when we ate strawberries. And then we didn't eat strawberries at all until the following year. So I did grow up eating seasonally, making stuff seasonally. And that instilled in me the love for fruits and vegetables and to eat what's in season because that's when it tastes the best. And then I came to California and I was introduced to the farmers markets and I'm like, this is great. This is great. I don't have to go to the grocery store for fruits and vegetables that may not taste right when they're off season. For example, tomatoes. In the winter, they just don't taste right. I still get them because I need it for my cooking, but they just don't taste the same way as they do when they are in season in summer. And I wanted to incorporate fresh fruits and vegetables as part of my brand, my aesthetic, my blog, my cookbook. And that's where Mumbai Modern comes into picture. It's like recipes that I'm bringing from Mumbai with a flair and touch of California, incorporating in-season produce, the amazing bounty that we are thankful for, and incorporating that in my dishes for my family.
We'll be right back. Today's episode is presented by California prunes, the best kind of prunes out there. I am a big fan of California prunes for two reasons. They're a great addition to your pantry when it comes to smart snacking and baking. You probably already know that prunes are good for your gut. You might even know that prunes are also good for your bone health. But what you really need to know is that prunes are absolutely delicious in both sweet and savory dishes. But don't just take it from me. Here's what some of the country's top culinary experts have to say. Chef Bronwyn Wyatt of Bayou St. Cake says, prunes have an earthy, winey richness that pairs beautifully with the tart, fresh flavor of berries. Chef Kat Turner from Highly Likely in LA says, they are an incredibly versatile ingredient that strike a great balance between sweet and savory. They are incredibly sensual. Ana Castro from Akamaya in New Orleans says, prunes have a sultriness to them. They are very rich and like velvet. I like to use prune puree in my baked goods to give them great flavor and also to replace some of the sugar, eggs, or fat in the recipe. It's super easy to whip up. Just blend prunes and water together and voila! For recipe ideas and more, be sure to check out the California Prunes website at californiaprunes.org. Happy baking and happy snacking. Guess what the latest issue of Cherry Bombe magazine is all about? Paris. Whether you're headed to Paris this year, dreaming of Paris, or just a Francophile at heart, you're going to love this issue. Get recommendations from She's My Cherry Pie faves like Dory Greenspan and Zoe Bakes, meet the coolest Parisians around, and learn about their restaurants, shops, bars, and bakeries, and meet some fascinating expats who changed their lives when they moved to the City of Light. Pick up an issue at cherrybombe.com or your favorite local bookstore, magazine shop, or gourmet store. You can find a complete list of retailers at cherrybombe.com. And there's a special promo for the Bombe Squad running right now. Buy the Paris issue plus any Cherry Bombe subscription and get free shipping. Just add code PARIS at checkout. Now back to our guest. Okay, now, I want to dive into your delicious recipe for chocolate and almond praline ice cream sandwiches. I know that Sundays were ice cream days when you were little. Can you tell us about where your dad would take you and what you guys would get?
Yeah. So every Sunday was ice cream day. My mom was very strict about when we would eat desserts. Saturday was a chocolate day when she would give us chocolate. And Sunday was ice cream day. And that's how we grew up. It was limiting the sugar and just making sure we are healthy. She would give us ice cream sometimes if we are good during the week. But it was, again, her mood dependent. So Sunday, Dad would take us after dinner to eat ice cream. It was family time together. And he would take us for a drive in the car, nice long drive. On the way back, we would stop by at this place which had a row of ice cream shops, like 2-3 ice cream shops. And we would pick and choose. Sometimes it was like a mango lolly or a raspberry lolly. There were limited flavors at that time, I mean, in the 1980s. So there were limited flavors, and that's what we would get. There was another place which was Naturals Ice Cream. We loved it. It was a new concept that had come into place, and they would make fresh fruit ice creams. Again, whatever's in season. So there would be like lychee ice cream. There would be mango ice cream in the mango season, strawberry ice cream in the strawberry season. It was just one flavor, but so good. It was fruit potent and absolutely delicious and creamy with all the milk from the cows, but fantastic ice cream. There was a flavor which we particularly liked, my brother and I, which was the choco almond. It was delicious. It was just chocolate ice cream with these toasted almond pieces. So when you bite into the ice cream, you could hear the crunch of the almonds. They were like so crisp. And that was the flavor that we most of the times ended up getting when we went to Naturals ice cream. Not the fresh fruit flavors, but choco almond, because that's what my brother and I loved. And that was the inspiration for these ice cream sandwiches.
I love that. And I learned reading the book that India is actually known for its almonds.
Yeah.
And they taste like uniquely delicious.
Yes, yes. Just like California is known for the almonds, India is known for the almonds too. They're smaller in size than the California ones, and they do taste a little bit different too. And of course, when they're toasted, they're absolutely crunchy and scrumptious.
This particular ice cream sandwich, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the cookie part of the
Yes.
sandwich. And the cookie is sort of your house chocolate chip cookie, as it were. It's the one you make for your family. And it's a chocolate chip and toasted almond cookie.
Yeah.
First things first, in a medium bowl. And I wonder, do you like glass bowls at home or metal bowls at home? And is there a brand you like?
I just use melamine bowls. I have a standard set of bowls. I got it as part of my wedding registry.
Oh, nice.
And I still use those.
So in a medium bowl, we're going to whisk all-purpose flour, bread flour, baking soda, baking powder, table salt, and cinnamon. And I had a couple of questions. Is there a kind of whisk or a brand of whisk or a type of whisk that you like to use, either a balloon whisk or
A balloon
something
whisk.
else? You like
Yes,
a balloon.
balloon whisk.
In case listeners don't know, explain why you're adding some bread flour to your chocolate chip cookie.
It's to add girth to the cookie. It gives it that structure. I love bread flour. Adding a little bit of bread flour to the cookie, I think it just adds a little bit of depth to it.
And is there a brand of flours of the all-purpose and bread flour that you like?
I use Bob's Red Mill all the way through.
And then how about the table salt? Is there a brand of that? And do you ever use kosher?
No, I don't use kosher. The reason I use table salt, and people may not like this answer, but I love that it's salty. It's really salty, and it gives the cookie a good balance of flavors with the sugar that you're adding, because you're adding white sugar and you're adding brown sugar. So the salt adds a little bit of balance to the flavors.
And there's also cinnamon in your
Yeah.
dry ingredients. What does the cinnamon add to the cookie?
I love the floral taste of cinnamon. I think cinnamon and almonds go hand in hand. They're like a fantastic combination together. And that's why I add cinnamon. I just love it. I sometimes actually substitute even cinnamon with cardamom. It's all mood dependent on what I'm feeling that day. So sometimes I substitute the cinnamon with freshly ground cardamom, and it's fantastic.
In the bowl of a stand mixer with the paddle attachment and on low speed, we're going to mix up some unsalted room temp butter and some brown and granulated sugars. Then we're going to increase the speed to the maximum, to high speed, and let this mixture go for about 3 minutes until it's white and fluffy. And then with a spatula, we're going to clean the sides of the bowl and sort of gather the mixture in the middle. So 2 questions. One, is there a particular brand of spatula that you love? And then also, why do you gather it in the middle? Is that just your way of describing that it's not on the sides, or is that sort of a Amisha trick that we all need to know?
So the spatula is Gur and Williams-Sonoma. I have both of those. I have a lot of their spatulas, so that's what I use. And gathering ingredients in the middle, because from experience, I've been baking for a very long time. What I noticed when I started baking is that there would be all this wet mixture touching the bowl. And when you put the flour, it still doesn't gather. The paddle attachment doesn't gather all the wet mixture. So you get like this lump of dry mixture in the middle and all this wet mixture which has not been cooperated into the dry mixture. And it results in an uneven dough. So to make it even and homogeneous, I collect the wet dough which is stuck to the mixing bowl with a spatula to bring it into the center so that it's a homogeneous dough.
And now we're going to mix in some room temperature eggs one at a time. Are we on low speed at this point?
Low speed still, yes.
And then we're going to mix in vanilla extract as well as almond. And why the almond extract? Is that just
Enhance
to sort
the
of bring
flavor of the cookie. Because I'm like, okay, the almonds provide the crunch, but the almond extract provides the taste, the deep taste.
Then we're going to add our dry ingredients in 2 installments at low speed until just combined. We're going to mix in some bittersweet and some semi-sweet chocolate chunks or chips. And I wondered, do you have a preference as to whether we're chopping our chocolate or using chips, and also what brand?
No, I don't have a preference. Again, it's very preferential depending upon the person that's making the cookie. I like it chopped because I want some smaller pieces which melt so well into the cookie, and then the bigger chunks which I can bite into. And that's why I like the chunks. But if you just want uniformity, like my kids, they actually make this cookie all the time. And they just put the chocolate chips because it's easier for them. They don't want to like go through the effort of chopping the cookie. So they're like, okay, we're just going to use chocolate chips. I use Ghirardelli for the chocolate chips. And if it's a chopping block, I use Valrhona.
Valrhona, yes. And then you like the two different chocolates just for a little bit of contrast.
There's a reason for that. If it was me, if it was only me eating the chocolate chip cookie, it would just be bittersweet. But it's because my kids are eating the cookie too. And my husband, they love milk chocolate. They don't want me to put any of the bittersweet chocolate. So I'm like, okay, you get a little bit of what you want and I get a little bit of what I want. And that's why I add both of them. But it adds dexterity to the cookie too.
I hate to say it, but I'm like your husband and kids. I want milk chocolate. Now, maybe not in my cookie, but if I'm going to eat a bar of chocolate, I want it to be milk chocolate. And then we're also going to add some chopped toasted almonds.
Yes.
And then we're going to divide our dough in half. We're going to wrap each half in plastic, chill for 3 hours, but up to 24 hours. And you have a great tip. If we're not baking right away, we're going to scoop our cookies, place them close together on a parchment-lined baking sheet, and then freeze them for about an hour, and then transfer to a Ziploc bag. So does that mean that at this stage, the dough is now firm enough to scoop? You just wouldn't want to bake it off at this point, but you can scoop it?
You can scoop it. And, well, if you cannot wait, you could bake it off too.
Yeah. Do you have people wait because you want the gluten to develop and you want it to be chewier, or because it's easier to bake if they're chilled?
Both of them, actually. It's easier to bake if they're chilled, as well as to develop the gluten. And I love a good, nice, chewy cookie in the center with the crispy edges. That's how I love it.
So now, once the dough is chilled, we're going to heat our oven to 350. We'll let the dough rest for about 10 minutes. And then on 2 parchment-lined baking sheets for these particular ice cream sandwiches, we're going to scoop 2 tablespoon dough balls, evenly placed like 8 or 10 per sheet. Then we're going to scoop them so one side is still going to be flat from the scoop, but now we're going to roll them in our palms to form a ball. So I had a couple of questions. Do they bake more uniformly if they don't have that flat side from the scoop? Is that why we're rolling them in our hands to make them into a circle?
For uniformity.
So I wonder, yes, I see. So you feel like if you roll them in your hands, they'll be more uniform than if you just leave them like
because
that.
Because when you scoop it and put it, there may be some little gaps in the scooper and the cookie may not be even. And I'm trying to make the ice cream sandwiches, and I want them to look uniform. And so that's why I just roll it so it's all uniform.
Perfect. And then the reason you flatten, because we don't roll, put on the tray and bake, we then flatten the ball. Is that because if we didn't flatten, the cookie wouldn't actually spread very much? And so we want to get it started ahead of time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then also when you bite into the ice cream sandwich, you don't want like a dome shape on the top. You want it to be like slightly flat, just so that it can fit in your mouth.
Yes. That's important. And now, are we going to sprinkle some flaky sea salt on top of these at this point? And do you have a brand that you like?
I use Malden sea salt, always.
So now we're going to bake on the bottom and middle racks of the oven. And I just wondered, why do we not want to be at the top of the oven?
They bake slowly on the top of the oven. So I want the heat. I want them to spread and be perfect.
We're going to bake for 12 to 13 minutes. And you write that we're going to flip the sheets halfway through. Do you mean sort of like rotating?
Yes.
Like placing the one that's on the bottom to the middle and the one that's on the middle to the bottom?
Yes.
And then when we remove them from the oven, I feel like this is like a little Sarah Kiefer trick, but maybe you came up with the idea too. But we're going to take those cookie sheets and we're going to bang them on the counter.
Oh, it's a Sarah Kiefer trick. She's awesome.
She's amazing. We're going to bang the sheets 2 to 3 times to sort of flatten the cookies. And it's funny, I don't pan bang, but I will take my spatula as soon as my cookies come out and flatten each one.
That's a good idea too. I love that.
Yeah, because I hate a lumpy cookie.
Yeah, me too.
I like a flat
me
cookie.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea.
So thank you. So then you're going to use your spatula, though, to kind of nudge the cookies from all sides to kind of make them round. Or we're going to grab a Erin Cloudy kitchen tip and take a large biscuit cutter or round cookie cutter and kind of scoot that around our cookie to make it round.
Absolutely.
I love both of those. I know we both know Becky from Displaced Housewife.
Oh, she's amazing.
And Becky always
uses a spatula. That's where I learned the trick from her, to use a spatula to give it that round shape.
Yeah.
And again, it's all mood dependent, how I'm feeling that day. And if I have more patience, then I will use a spatula. If I don't have patience, I'll just use the cookie round cutter to scoot it out.
And it's nice when the cookies, I'm sure the listeners know this, but when the cookies are that soft and warm right out of the oven, they're
Easy
still
to
a little bit
manipulate.
malleable.
Yes.
Yeah, but you have to, I feel like you have to move quickly.
Yes.
Because sometimes I start on one cookie, and by the time I get to the 12th cookie on the tray,
They're already
it does not want to move as much.
They already cooled quite a bit.
So we're going to let the cookies cool for 10 minutes on the baking sheets, then transfer to a wire rack and cool completely while we go ahead and make our praline and our ice cream. So we're going to make some almond praline, which go inside of these ice cream sandwiches. So we're going to line a baking sheet. The dimensions you give are a little smaller than a standard baking sheet. This is more almost like a jelly roll pan or something.
Yeah, it's just a small pan because, the quantity is not much. So, if you don't have, you can just use what you have on hand.
Right.
Yeah, just use what you have on hand. But I just prefer using a smaller one because I have it.
So we're going to line a small baking sheet, if you have it, with parchment paper, and then in a small saucepan. And I wanted to ask, do you have a brand of saucepans that you like?
I use Calphalon a lot.
In a small saucepan, we're going to cook some granulated sugar over medium heat until melted, which will take about 3 minutes. And then without stirring, we'll swirl our pan just until the sugar is like a golden caramel color. Yeah. Is this another 3 minutes or is this longer?
It happens very quickly. So you have to watch out for it. Once the sugar is melted, it changes color very quickly. So you cannot just go away somewhere and come back and expect it'll be burnt by then.
So now we're going to add toasted sliced almonds. So is this different than the one in the cookies? Are these thinner almonds than the ones we chopped for the cookies?
Yes, because it goes into the ice cream. So you want to be able to, when you bite into it, it should not feel like too gritty.
So we add our toasted sliced almonds and we're going to stir them into the sugar. What's our tool at this point? A spatula or a wooden spoon? Spatula. Yes. So we'll stir until the almonds are coated. And then I have done this in my lifetime, so I understand how quickly you need to move, but you need to move very quickly. Pour the mixture onto your sheet, and then use your spatula to spread it thin. And then cool, and then chop. And when you chop with a sharp knife, is it a chef's knife that you like?
Chef's knife.
Now we're going to make our chocolate almond praline ice cream. So we're going to place a strainer over a medium bowl, and then we're also going to have ready a large bowl with some ice and some water. And in a medium saucepan on medium heat, we're going to stir whole milk, heavy cream, cocoa powder, granulated sugar, stir that up, and then cook it until it reaches about 175 degrees. And I had a couple of questions. Yeah. First of all, in ice cream, do you think it's important to always have a mixture of milk and heavy cream? Do you ever just use milk or just use heavy cream?
The heavy cream gives depth and texture, and it removes the icy particles when you put the heavy cream in the mixture. And I think that's important because I want a smooth ice cream. I don't want to have icy particles in my mouth. I'm very picky that way about ice cream because I love ice cream. Actually, it's one of my favorite desserts. So I add heavy cream.
And then the cocoa powder, I wondered the brand, and I also wondered if it's Dutch processed or if it's natural.
Dutch processed. And I use Rodel.
I love Dutch processed because I love that dark color.
Yes.
It's so beautiful.
Yes. And it's tasty.
So we're going to stir all of this together until it reaches about 175. And while it's coming to temp, we're going to vigorously whisk egg yolks and granulated sugar in another bowl until pale yellow and ribbony. Yeah. Can you describe what the ribbons are that we're looking for?
It should be almost like a lava flow. When you whisk it and you pick up the whisk, it should just flow very, very naturally and very smoothly. And the reason is you want to make sure it's a pale yellow, and that helps with the texture of the ice cream as well. So that's why you want to make sure that it's well incorporated. The reason you're beating the egg yolks and the sugar is you want to firstly get it to that consistency. Secondly is you want to make sure that all the sugar is dissolved into the mixture.
I've also heard with ribbons, it's the kind of thing where you lift the whisk and you should almost see the mixture kind of float down on itself into the bowl and leave a mark, and then it disappears.
Yeah. It's like a wavy texture, like when you lift the balloon whisk, and it's just a wavy texture and it just gets into the bowl very quickly.
So now we're going to whisk half of our warm milk and cream mixture into our beaten yolks, about a half cup at a time. We're basically tempering
the egg yolk mixture.
Tempering the egg yolks. And then we're going to whisk the milk yolk mixture back into the warm milk on the saucepan, set that over medium heat, and cook with a wooden spoon. And I love this. You give us so many indicators of what we're looking for. We want to do this with a wooden spoon until steam appears, foam subsides, mixture is slightly thickened, and the temp is between 180 to 185 degrees. I think that is so helpful when recipe writing to remember that it's helpful to give more than one indication of what the reader or the home cook or the home baker is looking
Yeah,
for.
because you want the reader to be able to get the texture. Like, what are you looking for? The color. If there's a sort of smell that you're looking for, you should be able to describe a smell that they're expecting, because those are, like you said, indicators to the reader or to the person who's making the recipe that, okay, these are the things I need to look for and I can move forward. If you just say that, okay, it needs to reach a temperature of 180 degrees, it doesn't tell me much.
I agree. I also, when I make a custard, I use the wooden spoon, and I do the trick where you kind of draw your finger along the wooden spoon, and if the line that your finger made stays, then you know the
Custard is
custard's
done.
done.
Yes. And I think I missed that point in the cookbook.
Well, you have so many others. We don't need it. And we want to be careful, obviously, that we don't boil this mixture because then our eggs will curdle. So we're going to immediately strain our custard into our medium bowl, and then that ice bath that we had set up, we're going to place it in there and just cool the custard to room temp, stirring occasionally, and then we'll add some vanilla extract or vanilla paste. Now, I wondered, I don't usually do an ice bath when I make ice cream. I do let it come to room temp. Do you think the ice bath is necessary? I'm sure it helps because it speeds along the cooling process.
Yeah, I think it mainly speeds the process. And then, once it's cooled down, I can put it into the fridge and let it cool. It's mainly for speeding up the process because I have the ice cream maker already chilling in the fridge from the day before, and my kids are impatient.
So while the custard cools in a small double boiler, which is basically a small bowl over a small saucepan of simmering water, we're going to melt some chocolate chips, some whole milk, and some cayenne pepper. That's for like a little spicy
Just a little
kick.
Yes. Oh, chocolate
love
and
it.
cayenne. I mean, it's a match made in heaven. So it has to go together.
We'll mix those things together until the mixture is smooth and the chocolate's melted. And then we add this melted chocolate into the custard. So this chocolate ice cream not only has Dutch processed cocoa powder, but it also has melted chocolate.
Yes. It enhances the flavor of chocolate. And it makes it
to
deep.
do both.
Yes. Yeah. You get like this deeper chocolate flavor, which I love.
Kind of like with brownies, a lot of people will put both Dutch processed cocoa powder and melted chocolate into brown, and even chocolate cake. Are we adding the melted chocolate once the custard is cool, or are both items kind of warm when they're mixed together?
That's a good question. I think they're both warm, slightly not completely cold. It actually doesn't matter because you're finally adding the chocolate, even if it's at room temperature. You cannot keep it cold because the chocolate is just going to solidify. So you want to make sure that the custard is at room temp at the most and not chilled, and then mix the chocolate mixture. Okay. Yeah.
So we'll whisk to combine, and then we'll cover, refrigerate for at least 6 hours or up to 24 hours. Why? Why can't we just pull it out when it's cold? Why do we need to wait?
I think it all depends when your ice cream maker is ready, firstly. Secondly, the mixture has to be cold, when you put it into the ice cream maker for the ice cream to form. And you just follow the ice cream maker's instructions. And usually they recommend 6 to 24 hours of chilling time for the custard.
Okay, so now we're going to grease, I think you say, an 8 by 13-inch baking pan, and we're going to line it with enough parchment so it kind of goes over the edges because we're going to be lifting out some ice cream that we're going to be placing in this pan. So I had a question. Are we talking about like a 9 by 13 brownie pan situation, or are we talking about more like a sheet pan, like a cookie sheet?
Whatever you have on hand, it doesn't make a difference.
But does it matter the height of the pan? Because do you know what I mean? Like, we don't want 1 inch. We need a pan with high enough edges to hold the ice cream that we're going to put in.
Yeah. So
is that correct?
So again, it very much depends on what you have on hand. I don't want people to go out and buy stuff just for one recipe. So if you have a sheet pan, you could make like thinner ice cream sandwiches, and you could put the rest of the ice cream in a tub to eat it at another time. Or if you have a brownie pan, 9 by 13 pan, you could just put the ice cream in there, and you would just get like a higher heighted ice cream in that case.
Yeah. So we have our prepared pan. Now we're going to churn our custard in our ice cream machine. Do you have a favorite brand?
Cuisine Art. That's the one I use.
until the mixture resembles soft serve ice cream, which is my favorite, which is about 25 minutes. And is that not fully churned, or basically are we making it until it's ice cream? Is your indicator to us that it should resemble soft serve? Does that mean we're pulling it from the machine a teeny bit early?
No, you just do it per the manufacturer's instructions. It's 25 minutes. You make the ice cream, churn it for that time. It'll never solidify, so you need to put it into the freezer to solidify.
I can't tell a lie. Sometimes I eat it straight from the machine.
Oh, I do that too.
When it's still soft serve. I don't even want it. I prefer it soft.
Me too. I'm with you, Jessie.
I know. I mean, it's ice cream sandwich, different situation. But if I'm just making ice cream, I'm just like there.
Yeah, me too. I love it. It's the best texture.
Oh my God. I think I have to make it this weekend. I'm so hungry. Okay, so this I love. This is such a cool thing to do, I think. So we're going to transfer half of the ice cream into the prepared pan. We're going to spread it with a small offset spatula. Yeah. Do you have a favorite brand of offset that you like?
Believe it or not, I just got it from Target.
Yeah, I believe it. We're going to spread the ice cream with a small offset. Now we're going to sprinkle the almond praline on top of the ice cream, covering it. Then we're going to add the remaining ice cream on top and flatten the entire surface with the offset. Press our plastic wrap onto the surface and freeze the ice cream until firm, at least 4 hours. Fascinating. So why are we doing this? Is it so that the ice cream is in that flat shape and so that the praline is just in that middle layer? Because I would think you would take your ice cream, scoop it, put it on your cookie and press.
Ice cream sandwiches are such a versatile thing. You could do it however you want. I have recommended this way because I'm a perfectionist and I love things very symmetrical and looking very perfect when I'm serving it to people. But, you could just put it in a tub, put the ice cream in a tub, use a scoop, put it on a cookie, and serve it that way too.
I'm not as much of a perfectionist as you, but what I loved about this is I almost wondered if it's easier. Like the ice cream's already thin because it's spread out, so it's going to definitely chill faster. And I love the idea. Like I would have thought we would have been folding that praline into the ice cream, which you probably would if you were just eating the ice cream. But I love the idea of that middle layer. Yeah. So it's like ice cream, crunchiness, ice cream.
Because when you take the whole sandwich, you get a bite of like everything. It's like a party in the mouth.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I think it's a really smart way of
That's what I do with like a lot of different ice cream sandwiches that I make. I just put it on a sheet pan. First is perfectionist, and then second is it makes for easy scooping as well, because I use a cookie cutter to scoop it out. I use one of those biscuit cutters actually, because it scoops it out and then you can just push it with your thumb onto the cookie.
So we're going to assemble the sandwiches. We'll have ready a parchment-lined baking sheet. We're going to use our offset to loosen the ice cream from the edges of its pan, and then we'll use that parchment paper sling to remove our ice cream. Place the slab onto a cutting board, and then with a 2 1/4-inch round biscuit cutter, we're going to cut out a round of ice cream. We're going to invert half our cookies so the flat side is facing up, and we'll use our offset to remove our ice cream round from the slab, place it on the flat surface of the cookie, gently place the same size cookie on top, and gently press to adhere the ice cream to the cookies, and then transfer to our prepared sheet. Now we're going to repeat with the rest of the ice cream. Is the reason we don't cut them all right away is because it will get too melty?
Yes. It gets too melty.
It's better to keep it in one big slab and do
one at a time because it just melts. We generally make ice cream sandwiches in the summer. It's super hot and the ice cream just melts quickly. I have to turn on the AC.
Yeah, you repeat quickly and if the ice cream starts to melt, then place the slab back into the sheet pan or pan and freeze for an hour and then start again. Then we take all of our sandwiches and we're going to freeze them in the freezer for about an hour. There's an optional chocolate coating on the ice cream sandwich, and that's melting dark chocolate. Are you dipping half?
I'm dipping half of the cookie in the mixture, in the melted chocolate, and it's so good. And then just freeze it again, and it's perfect.
Do you freeze and then dip and then freeze again?
Freeze.
You can't dip.
Yeah, freeze, dip, because again, it melts so fast in the summer. So that's why I like to freeze.
So you need a frozen.
Yes. Yeah. Because again, the melted chocolate is slightly warm and it'll start melting the ice cream too.
Almost right away. Yeah, that sounds so delicious. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Amisha. And I just want to say that you are my cherry pie.
Oh, thank you so much, Jessie, for having me on this podcast. It was an honor to talk to you.
That's it for today's show. Thank you to Nonino and California Prunes for supporting this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to She's My Cherry Pie on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and tell your baking pals about us. Visit cherrybomb.com for today's recipe. She's My Cherry Pie is a production of the Cherry Bombe Podcast Network and is recorded at CityVox Studio in Manhattan. Our producers are Kerry Diamond, Catherine Baker, and Elizabeth Vogt. Our associate producer is Jenna Sadhu, and our content and partnerships manager is Londyn Crenshaw. Thank you so much for listening to She's My Cherry Pie, and happy baking!